This video is definitely going to be a long one, so make sure you have a drink or a snack and let's get into it. Hello, my name is Jamie. Welcome to another video. I've done a video like this last year. I thought it would be really fun to do an updated version of sharing with you my entire physical TBR. I don't know how many books are on here. I was gonna categorize them into different genres for this video, but there's just too much. I've got piles and piles around me, and I'm just gonna pull them and share a little bit about the book. And yeah, these are just all the books that I own that I'm yet to read. I thought this video would be really fun so you guys can see what might be coming up in some reading vlogs very soon. You guys can see if there's anything that you would like me to prioritize reading and share my thoughts on. But yeah, this is my 2023 physical TBR. I know that to some this might be excessive, but I need you guys to know, like, ooh, I hate doing a disclaimer, but look at me doing one right now. I have been collecting books for years and years and years. Like, some of these books I have owned for a very, very long time. If I'm not worried, I don't think anyone else should be worried about the amount of books that I own that I haven't read yet, especially considering I get through like 10 to 20 books a month. I read over 100 a year, so trust me, I am not worried. I know that I will read all of these in my lifetime at some stage. So yeah, let's just share everything that's on my physical TBR. Let's get into it. I hope you enjoy. The first book I have is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. I've never read a Kennedy Ryan book before, but I know that this is a very like heartbreaking romance. I think the main character is a single mother, but I'm really excited to read this one and read my first Kennedy Ryan book. I also have Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. This is a historical fiction romance, and I believe it is between two lesbians, another one that I'm really excited for. We have X's and O's by Amy Lee. This is another rom-com, and I believe our main character is a bookstagrammer. So obviously I'm really excited for that because, like, bookish content creator vibes. I have The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. This is a book that I've been wanting to read for so long. I cannot believe I haven't yet, but I know that this has got some sci-fi elements. But I really like Christina Lauren's writing style, and I've heard that this is one of their best, so I need to get to this soon. We have Mr. Wrong Number by Lynn Painter. I realize I'm getting through all of my rom-coms first for some reason. But yeah, Mr. Wrong Number by Lynn Painter. I haven't loved the Lynn Painter that I've read, but I've heard good things about this one. I have the Lancaster Prep series by Monica Murphy, which is Promises We Meant to Keep, A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime, and Things I Wanted to Say But Never Did. I believe these are pretty like heartbreaking romances, so I'm really excited to get into this series. We have another Christina Lauren, The True Love Experiment. This is their newest release, and I was actually sent this by Hachette Publishing very recently. Thank you, Hachette, for sending it my way, but this is in the same universe as The Soulmate Equation, so I don't want to read this until I've read The Soulmate Equation first. I have King of Wrath by Anna Huang, the first book in the Kings of Sin series. I really enjoyed the Twisted series, and I know that this will be more of the same. I believe this is like a billionaire romance. Our first non-romance book, we have Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. I have not read a Karen Slaughter book yet, which is so wild to me because I love thrillers. I've heard her thrillers are incredibly dark, so I'm really excited to read this one. I'm expecting like some violence and gore and just major plot twists, but I've just heard the most amazing things about her thrillers. I have another Karen Slaughter, which is The Good Daughter. I know nothing about this one, but I bought this one secondhand quite a while ago, so I do really want to read it soon. I have The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman, which I believe is like the first in a series of murder mysteries set in a retirement home, which sounds incredibly just up my alley, 100%. I have Marriage for One by Ella Mays. I've read another Ella Mays book before. I read To Love Jason Thorne, and I really enjoyed it. So I think this one is like slow burn marriage of convenience, and I'm very into that. Next I have Law by Alexandra Bracken, which I believe is like mythological retelling. I believe it's a YA fantasy, but it looks so good, and I've heard really good things about it, and it's a standalone. So I do want to read this soon. I have The Rom-Com Agenda by Jane Denker. This is another like rom-com, I think, or I mean it's literally in the title, Jamie, please. I have Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. This is a thriller that came out last year, and I've really been wanting to read it. I believe it's all set in the space of 24 hours, and I love books like that so much. So I'm really keen to read this one. I think it's like family reunion setting, which sounds so exciting. I can only imagine all the secrets that are going to be uncovered in this novel. I have How to Kill Your Family by Bella Mackie. I believe this is like a dark comedy about a woman who literally kills her family. Very intriguing. I have The End of Men by Christina Sweeney Baird. This has been in so many of my like monthly TBRs. The fact that I haven't gotten to it yet is so horrendous because this sounds so up my alley. It's like a dystopian where all the men like have ceased to exist. Honestly, fun vibes. We have Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. Really excited for this one. Velvet Was the Night by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Another book that I've had on my TBR for ages, but I read Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia like a couple of years ago and really loved it, so I do want to get to this very soon. Another Karen Slaughter, I have Pieces of Her, which I imagine is another thriller, obviously. We have Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky, and this is a horror novel. It's a big chunky one, so it's kind of intimidating to me, like it's massive, but I'm really excited to read this one nonetheless. I have Sign Here by Claudia Lux. This just sounds so me. I want to read it really soon, but I believe it's like Deal with the Devil vibes, or it's like set in hell, like how characters work in hell, and that just sounds really fun and cute. So yeah, I do want to read this very soon. I have The Devouring Grey by Christine Lynn Herman. This book I've had on my TBR for so long, but it's a YA horror. So honestly, October season might be when I read this. And we have the newest book on my physical TBR. I literally received this today. It is Fake Dates and Mooncakes by Shir Lee. This is a YA queer rom-com and I'm really excited to get into it. Like that cover, so cute. And how beautiful and floppy is this? Amazing. Next I have Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This is another rom-com. I believe it's like office workplace romance. And I read The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon last year and really enjoyed it, so I'm sure I will enjoy this one too. Look guys, I think it's safe to say I'll probably enjoy most of these books. I have To Hate Adam Connor by Ella Mays again. This is the sequel to Love Jason Thorne, and it's enemies to lovers, like famous, non-famous. Love those tropes, so cannot wait. I have The Younger Wife by Sally Hepworth. I believe this is a thriller mystery. I have A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. Someone told me this was like literary fiction about a cannibal, and then I heard something else that it was about like a vampire. I have no idea what this is about, but I just know that it's like very unhinged, and I'm into it. Next I have The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary. Again, I've never read a Beth O'Leary novel, but like I've always been really interested in a lot of her romances, so I'm really keen to check this one out. I have Luna Love by Lauren Kung Jessen. This is another recent book that I acquired, and it is a enemies to lovers or like rivals to lovers romance, all centering around the lunar zodiac, and I kind of love that. I have Never Ever Getting Back Together by Sophie Gonzalez, and I believe this is a romance, as YA romance, set on like a reality dating show, like a reality dating show competition. I recently read another book like that and absolutely loved it, so I'm really keen to get into this one too. I have The Neighbor's Secret by Alison Haller. I got this as like a book of the month sponsorship that I did so long ago, and I believe this is a thriller. I don't really know all that much about it. I just know thriller mystery vibes, so I am actually excited to check this one out. I'm always looking for new thriller authors. I have Into the Water by Paula Hawkins. Again, this is another thriller. I've had this on my TBR for so long. I don't know why I haven't read it yet. Like, I love a good thriller, but yeah, I've never read anything by Paula Hawkins as well. I saw the movie for The Girl on the Train and I didn't love the movie like at all, so I'm apprehensive, but like still really willing to give it a go. I have See You in September by Charity Norman, another book that I've owned for so long. This is set in a small town in New Zealand and it's like cult vibes. It's mystery thriller. Another thriller, we have The House Across the Lake by Riley Sagar. This is the one Riley Sagar book that's been released that I haven't read yet, so this is very high on my priority list. I have All the Dangerous Things by Stacey Willingham, another mystery thriller. It came out this year, and another author that I've never read from before, so I'm really excited to give this a go. I have On Rotation by Shirlene Obubi, and this is a romance between two doctors, and I don't know, it looks really, really good. I've never heard anyone talk about this, but I think I bought it on a whim just because I was like, it looks fun and I want to read it. I have Shiver by Ali Reynolds, another thriller. This is all set at a ski resort and it's like murder mystery vibes. Like, I think someone dies at the ski resort in this group of friends and they're like, who's the culprit? love those thrillers, so really excited to read this one. I have The It Girl by Ruth Ware, another thriller, of course. I think this one came out last year. I have Wolf Song by TJ Klune. I believe this is a queer romance, and I believe it's like werewolf vibes. It could be so wrong. I feel like every time I talk about this, someone corrects me on what it's about, so I just at this stage have no idea what it's about, but I'm really excited to read it and get into TJ Klune. I have Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. This is about a coven of witches in England, or in Scotland actually, I think. Love the Macbeth vibes of it all. I have Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey. I'm probably going to be reading this sooner rather than later, but this is another rom-com. I have The Secret Service of Tea and Treason by India Holton, which is the third book in the Dangerous Damsels series, and I really loved the first book in the series, didn't love the second one, so it'll be interesting to see how the third book goes, but this is a historical romance. I have Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. This is another one that you're going to be seeing a reading vlog from me sooner rather than later. It may even be before this video or after, I do not know, but this is another romance. I have the two remaining Briar Yu books that I haven't read yet, which is The Play and the Dare, book 3 and 4 in Briar Yu series by Al Kennedy. These are both college hockey romances, and I've read the first two books in the Briar Yu series, and I will be reading these along with my patrons, I think in July and August. So again, we'll be reading these sooner rather than later, but really excited to finish this universe. I also have Along for the Ride by Mimi Grace, which is an indie published romance that I got recently. It's like a road trip enemies to lovers romance. Love those vibes. I also have Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. Enemies to lovers romance, I think. I'm not sure what the tropes are actually, but apparently it's super similar to The Love Hypothesis. But I enjoyed The Love Hypothesis, so if it's super similar, I'm sure I'll enjoy this one too. Next, I have The Sweetest Remedy by Jane Icaro. This is another Book of the Month book that I got ages ago, same sponsorship as the last one. I believe this is a romance set in Nigeria, and I'm really interested to read this. A book that's been on my TBR for so long, which I've been really wanting to read, I do not know why I haven't picked it up yet, is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This is a historical fantasy, I believe, quite similar to The Poppy War, and I believe there's also like a sapphic relationship in here. Really excited to read this. Don't know why I haven't picked it up yet. Like, it's actually madness that I haven't picked this up yet. I have Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerry Maniscalco. I believe this is like YA historical murder mystery vibes. It's the first in a series, and I've heard really good things about this series. So even though I don't love historical, like historical contemporary, I don't even know if it's historical fantasy or like contemporary. I honestly have no idea, but I am actually really keen to get into this. I have The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell. I believe this is the first in a fantasy series as well about magicians. I think it's urban fantasy, I have no idea, but I'm excited to read this. I again have had it for ages, and I don't know why I haven't picked it up yet, but I do own it. I have this book here, Body of Stars by Laura Maylene Walter. This, I believe, is another historical kind of like magical realism novel. I think, again, I bought this one like just because I hadn't heard anyone talk about it and I really loved the cover. So kind of shallow reasons, but I bought it ages ago, like 3 years ago maybe. So I am actually excited to give it a go at some stage. I have The Beautiful by Renee Ardier. This is a vampire story, I believe, set in New Orleans in 1872, in the 1800s. I love vampire stories, so I'm really keen to read this one. I have an arc of Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I've been really wanting to read Ninth House for a long time. I've had this in my possession for like 4 years, but I don't know. I think I just have been waiting to get the physical copy, but it's really random because I'm like, why would I buy the physical copy? I already have the arc, but like, I think I just want to read the physical copy. I don't know. And also I think I'm just scared of Ninth House, to be fair. I know that now would be the kind of the perfect time to read it because Hellbent came out at the beginning of the year, but I haven't read Ninth House yet. I know that I should, but yeah, I have Ninth House. I have The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin, which I believe is another like YA fantasy about witches and like seasonal magic. It seems really fun. I've heard really positive things about this one, so I'm really excited to read this. I have Fair Catch by Candy Steiner. This is the first book in a college sports romance series. I've read the second book but not the first, but they can be read as standalones. But I really liked the book that I did read from the series, so I'm really excited to read the first one in the series too. I have The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armas. Haven't heard the best things about this one. So again, I'm pretty apprehensive going into this, but I actually think I'm going to be reading it this month. We'll see. But yeah, I do have this one. I have The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrane. This is another adult romance. I believe it's queer romance, and again, it's set on another reality dating show. Love that vibe. Need all of those books in my life, so I do really want to read this one soon. Next, I have Next to You by Hannah Bonham Young. This is another romance, and I believe it's set in like a car mechanic workshop. Not usually my vibe, but I've read another book by this author and really enjoyed it, so excited to check out this romance. I have the entire Chestnut Springs series, so Flawless, Heartless, and Powerless. I really want to read these 3 romances sooner rather than later, but I might actually do like a full spoiler-free reading vlog on this series. Nothing set in stone, so I don't totally know just yet, but let me know if you'd be interested in a full reading vlog on these, much like my Twisted series reading vlog. Next, I have Just My Type by Fallon Ballard, which is another Office Place rom-com. I also have the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This is a horror novel that I've been wanting to read for ages, and I really like Grady Hendrix, so I can't believe I haven't read this one. I think this is like considered his best as well. Anyway, love vampires, love horror, love Grady, so really need to read this. This is another book I've had in my possession since like before I even started booktube. Like I've had it for so long, but it is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton, and I believe this is like a murder mystery with some kind of like fantastical elements. I've heard really good things about this. Like my friend Yana said that it was like one of the best books she's ever read. So I really need to read this. I have Death of a Bookseller by Alice Slater. I bought this quite recently and it just sounded super intriguing, but I believe it's like maybe a literary thriller. I'm not totally sure, but it sounds like something I'd be really into. I have The Drift by CJ Tudor. This is another one that's set at like an isolated snowy cabin, and I believe it's like a thriller mystery. Not totally sure, but kind of love those vibes, so really want to read this. Next, I have Cryer's War by Nina Valera. I believe this is YA sci-fi with like a lesbian romance. Really actually quite interested in this. I don't know why I haven't read it yet, and I've owned it for so long. But yeah, I do need to get to this at some stage. I have A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, which I believe is dark academia fantasy. We've got The Perfect Son by Frida McFadden, another mystery thriller. I love Frida McFadden, like literally one of my new favorite thriller authors. So I do need to get to this at some stage. I have The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. This is a fantasy set in the 1800s in France about a heist. I love any stories about heist. Stories, books, movies, whatever it is, I love them. So I cannot wait to read this. I have Woman Eating by Claire Coda, which I've heard is like super unhinged. I have You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akweki Amizi, and I believe this is a romance. I'm not totally sure. I think it's like an unrequited love story. But yeah, really excited to read this one too. I have Scattered All Over the Earth by Yoko Tawada, which I believe is a dystopian Japanese novel. We've got The Bone Witch by Rin Chipeko, which I believe is another fantasy. This is the first in a series, I'm pretty sure. I have The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling, another romance I've heard nothing but good things about. I just really want to experience the like fun witchy vibes. I have Pachinko by Minjin Lee, and I believe this is literary historical fiction. I have Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power, which I believe is YA horror. I have The Family Game by Catherine Steedman, which is a thriller mystery. I have The Roommate by Rosie Dannon, which I believe is like forced proximity rom-com vibes. I also have The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave, which is I think a pretty like highly praised mystery thriller. I feel like I need to push these piles back. How can I do this safely without everything toppling? Success. Okay, let's just hope that everything else fits on this table. Okay, next I have Missing Clarissa by Ripley Jones. This is a recent release. It's a YA mystery thriller, very similar to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. And yeah, I do want to read this very soon, I think. It looks very fun. I have Damaged Like Us by Krista and Becca Ritchie, which is the first book in the Like Us series, which is following like the kids of all the characters in the Addicted series, which is one of my favorites. So I do really want to start the Like Us series very soon. I'm not sure. I know that it's going to be a big commitment, but I have really been missing the Callaways, so yeah, I don't know. I have Lifestyles of Gods and Monsters by Emily Robertson. I've had this on my TBR for so long. Again, this is a YA fantasy, and I believe it's another mythological retelling, but it's like competition vibes. Kind of love that. Love like competitions in books, honestly. I need to read more like book competition vibes. But yeah, I do have this. I have The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the Mistborn series. I have read The Final Empire, but I think if I was to read this one, I would need to do a reread of The Final Empire because it was a very long time ago when I read that. But I do want to get back into the series at some stage. Brandon Sanderson books just kind of scare me. Like, even though I loved The Final Empire and it was like a super easy read, I don't know, I think it's just the size. It's intimidating. But I do want to get back into it at some stage. I have Inner Holidays by Christina Lauren. I'm definitely saving this one for December, but it's a holiday romance. I have If You Could See the Sun by Anne Liang, which is a YA magical realism, I believe, about a girl who starts turning invisible. We have Notes on an Execution by Dania Kukafka. This is a thriller, I believe. I think we're in the mind of like a serial killer, which is kind of scary vibes. But I'm like invested. I wanna hear more. We have The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, which is a horror, which I really want to get into. We've got He Started It by Samantha Downing. The one Samantha Downing book I haven't read yet. I'm not sure how many does she have. I've read 2. Oh, I don't know, but I love Samantha Downing and this is another thriller and I do want to read it. I have Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I really want to read this. It's such a critically acclaimed romance, I think, in the romance community, and I'm super excited to get into Abby Jimenez, and I really want to read this so I can read Yours Truly because I've heard so many good things about that. I have Special Topics in Calamity Physics by Marisha Pessl. I've read Night Film by Marisha Pessl and I really enjoyed it. This one I bought from a secondhand bookshop so long ago because I was told that it was like secret history vibes, and that's my favorite book ever. So I guess when I finally read this, we'll see if those claims are true. We have Sugar by Carly Nugent. This is a YA contemporary about a girl with type 1 diabetes, I believe. I'm really excited to check this one out. I have both Good Girl Complex and Bad Girl Reputation by Elle Kennedy, I believe. These are in a companion series, I think, like beachside romances, new adult romances about like 18-year-old, 19-year-olds, I'm not sure. But I do want to read these. I do like Elle Kennedy's writing. I just find it so readable and fun. So I want to get to these eventually. I have The Falling in Love Montage by Kiera Smith. This is a, I believe, YA, but it's a sapphic romance. And it's like meet cute vibes. Love that, so I really want to read this. Love all of the sapphic romances. I also have The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, which is the first book in the Broken Earth trilogy, and I do really want to read this fantasy series. I believe it's told in like second person, which is just so intriguing to me, so I want to get to this ASAP. I also have Crave by Tracy Wolff. I've heard this is a super trashy like paranormal romance series about vampires. I think it's set at like a school with like vampires and mythological beings and stuff like that. So I think it's a pretty big series, but you know what? I'm keen. I'm excited for it. Next, I have The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz, which I believe is a pretty new release like mystery thriller. Apparently it's super scary. Love that. I also have Isaac and the Egg by Bobby Palmer. This was recommended to me by my friend Amika, so I bought it pretty recently. Well, not recently, like last year. And I really need to read it. I've heard it's like super heartbreaking, super heartwarming at the same time. But yeah, maybe like a coming of age novel. I'm not sure, but I really want to read it. I have Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire, the first book in the Wayward Children series, a series I really, really want to get into. I've been wanting to get into it for so long, so I do need to read this. I have Those Who Pray by Jennifer Moffat. I believe this is a YA mystery thriller about a cult. Love a cult. I have Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I do really want to read this. I've heard amazing things about it. Well, I've heard mixed things about it. I feel like people either love it or hate it. I do feel like I'm going to be in the camp of loving it. But again, I think this might be another series that I do a reading vlog on, so stay tuned. I have Tristic's Venom by Penelope Douglas. This is a lesbian, like, toxic bully romance. I do really need to read it. Penelope Douglas is low-key my guilty pleasure author, so I do need to read this badly. I have Vipers and Virtuosos by Sav R. Miller, which is the second book in the Monsters and Muses series, which is a series of dark romances. We have Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. I know, I really need to read this. This is a college hockey romance. We've got I Kissed Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston, another lesbian romance I really need to read, but I think this one is YA. I have Paper Princess by Erin Watt, the first book in the Royals series, which is a series of romances. I do need to read this one. I think this one's a bit of a classic. I have Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This one I've had on my TBR for so long. I've owned this for so long, but I believe this is dystopian or sci-fi. I'm not totally sure, but it's the first in a series. I have The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa, which is a rom-com, I think, set at a wedding. I have When Gracie Met the Grump by Mariana Zapata. I do really like Mariana Zapata. I just haven't read like a whole bunch of her work, but the work that I've read by her I've really enjoyed. For example, From Luke with Love and All Roads Lead Here. I really like those novels, so I'm excited to check this one out as well. I have Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. So many people have been telling me to read this, and I know that it is like small town romance. Okay, I have Hang the Moon and Count Your Lucky Stars, both by Alexandria Bellfleur, and they are books 2 and 3 in a companion series. I don't know what the companion series is called, maybe Written in the Stars, I'm not totally sure, but the first book is Written in the Stars, which I really liked, and this one is a sapphic romance. This one is straight vibes. I also have Happy Hour by Marlo Granados. This is a recent novel gifted to me by my lovely friend Aria, and I believe it's lit fic, I think, set in New York. We have The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. This is the sequel to Once Upon a Broken Heart, YA fantasy, and this is highly anticipated for me. I really want to read this. I have The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. This is a YA fantasy as well, and I think it's inspired by Persian mythology? I'm not totally sure, but I think it's inspired by some sort of mythology. I have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett, which I believe is cozy fantasy. I'm really excited to read this one. I have The Witch Elm by Tana French, which I believe is like mystery thriller vibes. I believe it's a little bit, I don't know. I've also heard The Secret History compared to this. I don't know why, but I just know that it's like mystery thriller vibes. I have The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, another book I've owned for such a long time. I believe this is pretty classic, like gothic horror. I have The Old Wound with the Knife by Gu Byung Mo, and this is a Korean thriller. We've got Until It Fades by K.A. Tucker, which is another romance. I think it's about like a single mother. We have Acts of Service by Lillian Fishman. I believe this one is super unhinged woman vibes. I have Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson, another like rom-com. I have Mother Thing by Ainsley Hogarth. This is a horror that I've been wanting to read for so long, about like a pretty unhinged mother-in-law. I'm pretty sure, but I've heard amazing things about this one. I have Thou Watching You by Chelsea Ichaso, and this is YA thriller about like a secret society. You know I love those sorts of books. I have The Last Time We Say Goodbye by Cynthia Hand, which I believe is a YA contemporary, which is super sad. I've got This Place Is Still Beautiful by Gigi Tian, which I believe is YA contemporary. I have Legendborn by Tracy Dion, the first book in a YA fantasy series. I have Lonely Castle in the Mirror, which I believe is a Japanese like fairy tale fantasy magical realism. We've got The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell. I really want to read this. This is the only Lisa Jewell on my TBR. It's the only Lisa Jewell that I own that I haven't read, but Lisa Jewell does really fun mystery thrillers. I have How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix, another horror. I have the entire Caraval trilogy. So Caraval, Legendary, and Finale. This is a YA fantasy series, which I'm very, very invested in. I think it's connected to the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. But this one came first, so I should probably read this pretty soon. I have This Might Hurt by Stephanie Roble. I got this from a secondhand bookstore quite recently, and I believe it's another mystery thriller. I have The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. Pretty sure I'm going to be reading this for my Patreon in July, so I'm super excited to read this very soon. I have House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. This is a massive book. It is the second book in the Crescent City series. I read the first book like earlier in the year. I do need to get to this one eventually before the third book in the series comes out. I have another big chunky book. This is Glow by Raven Kennedy, and this is the fourth book, the second to last book in the Plated Prisoner series, and this is the only one that I haven't read that's actually out. The final book in the installment doesn't come out till December, so I'm actually going to be taking my time with this one, but I will be reading it before the year ends. I have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This is the book that everyone is talking about. I'm definitely feeling FOMO about this fantasy novel that like everyone is loving, so I probably should read this sooner rather or later so I stop, I don't know, feeling that FOMO, you know what I mean? I have The Schoolhouse by Sophie Ward. I'll be reading this pretty soon actually, but I believe this is a mystery thriller. Dark Academia even. I have Midnight Strikes by Zeba Shahnaz, and this is a brand new YA fantasy about like a time loop. Love that vibe. I have The Pledge by Cale Dietrich, which is a new adult, I think, like college aged characters, like horror slasher vibe. so I do need to read this soon. It sounds very fun. I have The Girl Before by J.P. Delaney. I believe this is another mystery thriller. I have What We All Saw by Mike Lucas, another one that I've had for ages, and this one is a YA mystery thriller actually. I also have Rules for Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. I think this is also known as like 8 Perfect Murders, I'm pretty sure. But this one sounds so exciting, and it has heaps of references to The Secret History, which is my favorite book of all time. So I really do need to read this book. Even if Peter Swanson, I've read 3 of his books, I've only loved one of them. I'm hoping this one will be the second one. Okay, we need to have a better track record with Peter Swanson. I also have Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This is a bit of a booktube classic, so I don't know why I haven't read it yet, but this is the first in a dystopian YA series. Next we have probably one of the oldest books on my TBR, Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This has been held up in so many videos. Most of them are physical TBR videos, or like monthly TBR or yearly TBRs. Why can't I just read this? Why can't I just put my big girl trousers on and read this novel? I'm scared. And now there's even a prequel out. What a mistake. Anyways, I do need to read this, and I will read it this year, I promise. Next we have The Winners by Frederick Buckman, which is the 3rd book in the Beartown trilogy, a trilogy that I love. I do need to read this sooner rather than later. We've got The No Show by Beth O'Leary. I've heard really good things about this one, but this is a romance. I have Utopia Avenue by David Mitchell. This is about a band in the 70s, and it sounds really up my alley, so I really need to read this soon as well. I have The Measure by Nikki Ehrlich. I believe this is dystopian. It kind of gives me the vibes of They Both Die at the End, but just like better and adult. And I'm excited. I'm really excited to read this one. I have Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. I got this at a secondhand bookstore recently as well, and so many people were like, Jamie, you're gonna love it. It's so good. So yeah, I'm really hoping to read this one soon. I have 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. This one is super high priority for me because A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is one of my favorite series of all time. So I really need to read this. I have Seven Faceless Saints by M.K. Lobb. This is a new book in a new fantasy series. It came out in like February, I think, but it's like murder mystery fantasy vibes. Love that. I also have Daughter of the Burning City by Amanda Foody. This is another YA fantasy set in a circus. Love it. I have Stone Cold Touch and Every Last Breath, both by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I read White Hot Kiss pretty recently, like a few months ago. Enjoyed it, so I was like, you know what, I'm intrigued to continue the rest of this like paranormal YA series. It's fun. It's a fun vibe. It's not that deep. It's just fun. I have another Sally Hepworth novel. It is The Things We Keep, which is another mystery thriller. I have Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia again. This one is a YA historical, no, I don't even know if it's YA. It might just be adult fantasy, but I think it's like adult fantasy, like historical vibe. I have Call Me Evie by J.P. Palmer. This is another mystery thriller set in New Zealand. Again, small town New Zealand vibes. You know I love it. I have When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I'm giving Sarah Adams another go because I've heard so many good things about this one and Practice Makes Perfect. Did not like the cheat sheet, didn't love it, but I'm willing to check out this rom-com. I also have The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. I need to read this. The Phantom of the Opera. I always go through phases where I'm just obsessed with The Phantom of the Opera, the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. So it's like, I need to like, you know, get to know my roots. If I'm obsessed with the musical, I should just read the book because I love the story of the Phantom. Anyway, I really need to read this. Love The Phantom of the Opera. I also have The Emperor's Babe by Bernardine Evaristo. Bernardine Evaristo wrote Girl, Woman, Other, and I really enjoyed that novel. And this one is all told in verse, and it's set in like 211 AD, and it's like Roman history retelling vibes, but in like verse. Next we have Ghosts by Dolly Alderton. This is Dolly Alderton's first fictional novel, and I believe it's like about a woman in her mid-20s figuring life out. And I'm actually gonna be reading this one this month as well. Some of these I may have already read, like before this video even goes live. My second to most recent book that I've acquired, Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Also, I just want to show you guys, I got a signed copy. Oh my god, this is my 4th signed R.F. Kuang book. Obviously I'm a fan, but I cannot wait to read this. I'm so excited. This is literally my most anticipated 2023 release. I have These Precious Days by Anne Patchett. This was a gift last year from one of my best friends, and it's a collection of essays just about life. And I love that, so I do really need to read this soon. I have Are You Happy Now by Hannah Jameson. I believe this is like about a whole cast of characters that are all going through something, and it's all set at a wedding. I love a wedding setting, but yeah, I believe this one is going to be really, really great. I have The Memory of Animals by Claire Fuller. Really excited to read this one. I believe it's like post-apocalyptic vibes, and I love that. I have A Lonely Girl is a Dangerous Thing by Jessie Tu. I've had this one on my TBR shelf for ages as well. I think I got it a few years ago, but it's, yeah, another like woman in her 20s struggling with life vibes. Obviously, like, that is one of my favorite genres. I genuinely love it. I have Cult Classic by Sloane Crosley. This, I believe, is again about like modern dating, women in her early 20s. It just sounds really fun, so I'm excited to check this one out. I have Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This one was recommended to me by one of my patrons recently, and I was like, it sounds really up my alley. It's about like a talking octopus. Love it. I love sea creatures, so just put a sea creature in the novel and I will love it. I have Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen. This is historical fiction, and I nearly unhauled this in a video once, like last year, but I really love circuses, and people were like, Jamie, why don't you just keep it? So I think, you know, it gets another go on my TBR shelf. If I don't read it before the end of the year, then it will go, it will be unhauled, but I do want to give it a go. I have The School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chan. This one I think is dystopian about motherhood. I do really want to read it. I actually put it in my TBR for this month, so I'm sure I'll get to it soon. I also have Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Malors. This is actually the book club pick for my Patreon for this month, so I will be reading this, like probably starting it within the next couple of weeks. It's like only the 9th of June, so I still have like a few weeks before I need to finish this, so I'll be starting this really soon. I have The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel. Emily St. John Mandel wrote Station 11, and I love that book. Love a post-apocalyptic novel. Not totally sure what this one is all about, but I'm willing to give the author another go, even if I don't know what the subject matter is. I have Seeing Other People by Diana Reid. This one, again, I think is another, like, I think it's like normal people vibes, you know, like toxic relationship, early 20s, not quite a romance, but like just about a relationship between two people. I have Search History by Amy Taylor. This is another recent purchase, and this one is about modern dating and about a girl who gets like obsessed with her like new boyfriend's ex and like stalking her on Instagram. Honestly, it sounds really fun, and I love books about modern dating. I have Belladonna by Adeline Grace, which is a gothic fantasy that I am going to be reading this month. It's going to be on my read shelf very soon, I promise. I have Real Life by Brandon Taylor. I believe this is a really, really heartbreaking novel, so I think I need to be like emotionally prepared before I read this. I have Ask Again Yes by Mary Beth Keane. I actually no idea when I got this or why I got it. I don't know what it's about. I think it's just like a general fiction contemporary. I'll give it a go at some stage, I'm sure. I've actually never read anything by this author, but we have Killing Commendator by Haruki Murakami. I really need to read this ASAP. This is a massive book though, so it's really scary, and I've not read anything by Murakami. Let me know if I should start with this or if I should start with something else, if you have read a lot of Murakami before. I have Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. This is another like general fiction contemporary, and I love Celeste Ng's books. They just have so much heart and depth to them, so I'm really excited to read this one. This one was her release from last year. I have Just Like You by Nick Hornby. I'm pretty sure this is my mum's, and she like gave it to me to read. I think again it's just about like young people in England. I have An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. I need to read this so soon. I have owned this for so long, but I believe it's about some people that go like viral on YouTube, and it's kind of dystopian, kind of sci-fi. I'm not totally sure, but I need to read it ASAP. I have two more Tessa Bailey books. I have Love Her or Loser, which I think is the sequel to Fix Her Up, like that companion novels in a companion series. And then I also have Secretly Yours, which is the first book in a new companion series. And so these are both like romances. Like, you guys know who Tessa Bailey is. I have Blue Ticket by Sophie McIntosh. I believe this is a dystopian. I have A Curious Beginning by Deanna Raybourn, which is the first book in the Veronica Speedwell mystery series. I have The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and Austin Steedman Broker. I love this author duo, so I'm really excited to read this. I read their book Do I Know You quite recently, and this one just looks really fun. Sorry everyone, my camera died, so if the things look a little bit different, That is why I apologize, and I could only charge it for a little bit before the light went, so we're gonna go through the remaining books very quickly. Next we have If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. I believe this is really sad. YA contemporary. I have Winter in Paradise by Elin Hildebrand, which I believe is an adult contemporary, kind of like mystery vibes. I have Saltwater by Jessica Andrews, which I believe is literary fiction. I have The Herd by Andrea Bartz, which is I think maybe like a thriller mystery vibe. I have And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Buckman, which is a very heartbreaking novella. I have Her Every Fear by Peter Swanson, another mystery thriller I really want to read. The Girl Beneath the Sea by Axie O, which is a YA fantasy, and it looks so fun. I have Not That Kind of Ever After by Lucy Adams, which is an unconventional rom-com. I have The Poet by Louisa Reed, which is a very heartbreaking adult novel, all told in verse, I believe. I have The Stolen Heir by Holly Black, which is the first book in a new series set in the same world as the Folk of the Air trilogy. Really excited to read this. Disgusting that I haven't read it yet. I have Lap Vonna by Otessa Moshfegh. I have The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is another book that's entirely told in verse, and it's a YA contemporary. I have Valley of the Dolls by Jacqueline Susan, which I believe is like a modern contemporary classic set in the 1970s about like a bunch of housewives. I have these two books in this duology, Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves. I believe this is a YA fantasy duology about some criminals, some thieves literally. I have Possession by A.S. Byatt, which I believe is another like modern classic. I have The Magicians by Lev Grossman, which I believe is urban fantasy set at a magical school. And I also have Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Tales from the Cafe, and Before Your Memory Fades, which is book 2 and 3 in the series. I've read the first one, really loved it, and these are really great novels. Well, I don't know if these ones are going to be as good as the first one. I haven't read them, but I really liked the first one, so I'm anticipating these two will be really good. I have, no, okay, this is probably the book that's been on my TBR the longest. I've just been putting it off so much. It is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I really do need to read this, but I'm scared. I never know if like when the right time is. Yeah, I'm scared of this one. I have Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson, which I believe is litfic, maybe another modern classic, I'm not totally sure. I have What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, which is a horror novella. I have The Things We Leave Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. Oh my god, Rebecca Yarros! She wrote Fourth Wing. I didn't know that she did like random romances as well. Well, here we go. I thought Rebecca Yarros' Fourth Wing, that was like a debut author. I guess not. That goes to show how clued up I am. I have These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling, which is a YA fantasy. I have Writers and Lovers by Lily King. I've actually tried to read this once, but it put me in a massive slump. I will try and read it again. I won't give up on it, but we'll see how we go. I have Mr. Loverman by Bernardine Evaristo. I believe this is a very hard-hitting adult contemporary. I have Sweet Sorrow by David Nichols. I believe this also is adult contemporary. I have People Person by Candace Carty-Williams. I recently read Queenie by the same author and loved it, so I cannot wait to get into this one. I have Brutes by Diz Tate. This is a newer book in my collection, and I believe it's like literary fiction, coming of age novel set in Florida. I have Good Rich People by Eliza Jane Brazier, and this is, I think, about like actual fucked up rich people, like not good rich people at all, evil ones. I have House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. This is a YA horror. Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austin. I believe this is also another like hard-hitting adult contemporary. I have Dig by A.S. King. This is a novel that so many people I have seen recommend, and I believe it's hard-hitting YA contemporary. I have Insatiable by Daisy Buchanan. This is Unhinged Women, I think. And I also have Limelight by Daisy Buchanan, and I believe this is her newest release. I think it might be like pretty hard-hitting. I'm not sure. Maybe it's Unhinged as well. I don't really know much about this one, but it does look good. Oh my god, my battery's flashing yet again, and I have 3 more books. I have Never World Awake by Marisha Pessel, which is YA thriller. Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune, which is her newest romance. And finally, LA Women by Eve Babbitt, which is a shorter novel about young people in LA. Wow, that is everything on my physical TBR, as you guys can see, I started filming this like mid-afternoon. The sun is now setting, so I don't know how long this video is gonna be. I'm scared to edit it. Yeah, this is everything on my physical TBR. Guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've spotted any books that you're like, Jamie, you need to read that ASAP, and let me know what they are in the comments down below. I know that I have a lot, but you know, I already said my disclaimer. I don't need to add anything else. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for spending all your time with me. A reminder that all my socials are linked down below, so my Bookstagram, and so is my Patreon. So if you do want to see extra content from me, all that information is on the page. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you all so much, and I'll see you very soon in another video. Bye!